Just what are your plans for the off season and possibly playing or just doing individual workouts?
Yeah, I mean, probably take a little bit of a break here, just for maybe a week. I don't really want to lose a ton of the stuff I've worked on, and just trying to get my body back to full health. There's some USA basketball stuff I need to get ready for.
The biggest name in women's basketball, barely a year into her professional career, suddenly becoming the center of reports that she's influencing major roster decisions. It sounds like the kind of story that would dominate headlines, and that's exactly what's happening as conversations surrounding Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever continue to grow. According to recent speculation, the discussion isn't centered on Clark's contract or her individual performance. Instead, it focuses on the future of two teammates, Sophie Cunningham and Lexie Hull, and whether the Fever's front office will prioritize keeping them on the roster. While no official ultimatum has been confirmed, the reports have fueled an intense debate about just how much influence a generational superstar can have inside an organization. Whether those claims prove true or not, one thing is undeniable. Caitlin Clark has changed the WNBA in ways few athletes ever have. Long before she played her first professional game, she transformed the landscape of women's basketball. At Iowa, she broke scoring records, shattered television ratings, packed arenas across the country, and introduced millions of new fans to the sport. When the Indiana Fever selected her with the first overall pick, the franchise changed almost overnight. Tickets became some of the hardest to find in the league. Merchandise sales exploded. National television audiences reached record highs. Every Fever game suddenly became a major event, with fans eager to watch the rookie who had become the face of a new era in women's basketball. That level of popularity naturally brings attention, expectations, and constant speculation. Every roster move, every coaching decision, and every front office choice is now analyzed through the lens of how it could affect Clark and the team's future. That's a level of scrutiny very few players experience so early in their careers. Now, with free agency approaching, the conversation has shifted toward team chemistry and roster construction. Sophie Cunningham and Lexie Hull have become key names in those discussions, with fans wondering whether the Fever will find a way to keep important role players around their franchise cornerstone. The organization hopes to build a legitimate championship contender. Every personnel decision matters. The challenge isn't simply adding talent. It's creating a roster that fits together, complements Clark's unique style of play, and positions the Fever for long-term success. Whether the recent reports are ultimately confirmed or dismissed, they highlight an important reality. Caitlin Clark's presence has elevated every conversation surrounding the Indiana Fever. Every decision now carries greater significance because the expectations surrounding the franchise have never been higher. The biggest question isn't whether Clark has become the face of the WNBA. That answer is already clear. The real question is whether the Indiana Fever can build the kind of championship-caliber team that keeps their superstar and their growing fan base, believing the future is as bright as everyone expects. Soon as the season came to an end, the Indiana Fever faced a massive challenge. Looking ahead to 2026, only 3 players, Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, and Michaela Timpson, were already under contract. Nearly everyone else was headed toward free agency, including 2 players who had become fan favorites, Lexie Hull and Sophie Cunningham. Publicly, the organization expressed interest in bringing back as much of the roster as possible. Behind the scenes, however, the reality was far more complicated. With limited salary cap space, difficult decisions appeared inevitable. Keeping every key contributor simply wasn't guaranteed. To understand why this became such a major talking point, you have to understand how the WNBA's financial system works. Unlike many other professional leagues, every dollar matters. The league's salary cap is relatively small, meaning teams often have to choose between retaining valuable role players and creating enough flexibility to build a championship-caliber roster. That reality puts front offices under constant pressure. One new contract can completely reshape an off-season. Every negotiation becomes a balancing act, and even popular players can find themselves facing uncertain futures, not because of their performance, but because the numbers don't always add up. For the Fever, the situation was especially challenging. Caitlin Clark represents the centerpiece of the franchise. Aaliyah Boston remains one of the league's brightest young stars. Veteran guard Kelsey Mitchell is another player many expected the organization to prioritize. At the same time, Lexie Hull and Sophie Cunningham had proven how valuable they could be through their energy, defense, leadership, and willingness to embrace their roles. Trying to keep all of those pieces together would require careful financial planning. That's why speculation quickly began surrounding which players might ultimately return and which could receive offers elsewhere. One of the biggest talking points involved Lexie Hull. Reports suggested that if another team presented a significant contract offer, Indiana might have a difficult decision to make. While those reports remain unconfirmed, they sparked widespread debate among fans who believed Hull had earned a long-term place with the franchise. Hull's journey makes those conversations even more compelling. Selected in the second round of the 2022 WNBA draft, she entered the league without the expectations attached to a top pick. Early in her career, opportunities were limited, and consistent playing time was hard to find. Everything changed when injuries created an opening. Hull embraced the opportunity, becoming a reliable contributor on both ends of the floor. Her hustle, perimeter defense, rebounding, and improved shooting turned her into one of the Fever's most dependable role players. Night after night, she earned the trust of coaches, teammates, and fans alike. That's why the possibility of losing her generated such a strong reaction. Whether the rumors prove accurate or not, they highlight just how difficult roster building can be in the WNBA. Every decision carries consequences, and every contract negotiation has the potential to reshape a team's future. As the offseason unfolds, all eyes remain on Indiana. The question isn't simply who stays or who leaves, it's whether the Fever can keep building a roster capable of competing for championships while navigating one of the most challenging salary structures in professional sports. Lexie Hull's value wasn't measured only by points on the scoreboard. She developed into one of the team's most dependable perimeter shooters, stretching opposing defenses with her three-point accuracy while giving Caitlin Clark more room to create. Add in her relentless defense, hustle, and willingness to do the little things, and Hull became the type of role player every contender needs. What made her rise even more impressive was where she started. Once viewed as a player fighting simply to stay in the rotation, Hull steadily earned the trust of the coaching staff and transformed herself into an important piece of Indiana's rebuilding effort. Her growth became one of the season's biggest success stories. That's why speculation about her future immediately caught fans' attention. If Indiana were unable to retain her because of salary cap limitations, it wouldn't simply be losing a role player. It would mean parting with someone who had become an important fit alongside the team's young core. Sophie Cunningham brought a different kind of value. After arriving from the Phoenix Mercury, she quickly established herself as a veteran presence capable of providing toughness, confidence, and playoff experience. Her competitive attitude, timely shooting, and willingness to embrace physical play gave the Fever another dimension. Just as importantly, she appeared to develop strong chemistry with Clark and the rest of the roster. Whether it was spacing the floor, defending multiple positions, or bringing energy during crucial stretches, Cunningham looked comfortable in Indiana almost immediately. But free agency has a way of changing everything. As an unrestricted free agent, her future rested on negotiations, financial flexibility, and the priorities of the front office. Even players who perform well can become difficult to retain when salary cap constraints force organizations to make difficult choices. That's when the conversation took another turn. Reports began circulating that Clark strongly preferred keeping key teammates together and wanted the organization to preserve the chemistry that had started to develop. While those reports have not been officially confirmed by Clark or the Fever, they fueled widespread discussion about how much influence a franchise player should have over roster decisions. The speculation intensified with claims of conversations between team leadership and Clark's representatives regarding the direction of the roster. None of those reports have been publicly verified, but they sparked a league-wide debate. When a player becomes the face of a franchise, how much input should they have in shaping the team's future? Whether the rumors are accurate or not, they highlight a reality every successful organization eventually faces. Building around a superstar isn't only about adding talent. It also means deciding which teammates best complement that star, which relationships are worth preserving, and how to balance basketball fit against financial limitations. If Indiana hopes to become a true championship contender, those decisions could define the franchise for years to come. The biggest challenge isn't simply signing the best players available. It's building a roster that can grow together while navigating one of the most restrictive salary systems in professional sports. According to the speculation, Clark didn't wait for free agency to unfold before making her preferences known. The report suggested she wanted clarity early, before negotiations gained momentum and difficult roster decisions became irreversible. If those reports are accurate, the timing is what makes the story so fascinating. Rather than reacting after players received offers from other teams, the narrative suggests Clark wanted the organization to understand her priorities from the very beginning of the offseason. That's a very different kind of influence than simply commenting on moves after they've already been made. Whether or not those claims are true, the conversation has sparked a much bigger debate across the basketball world. How much input should a franchise superstar have in building a roster? Historically, that level of influence is usually associated with players who have spent years leading championship contenders. It often comes after MVP awards, finals appearances, or multiple seasons with the same organization. Seeing those discussions emerge around a player this early in her professional career has naturally drawn attention. Many fans have even compared the situation to the player-driven influence seen in the NBA, where established superstars have often helped shape roster decisions and organizational direction. The comparison isn't about identical circumstances. It's about the broader question of how much weight a transformational player should carry when the future of a franchise is being planned. From a basketball perspective, the reasoning is understandable. Teams perform best when chemistry develops over time. Keeping trusted teammates together can improve communication, confidence, and continuity, especially for a young roster still learning how to win consistently. Clark has repeatedly emphasized the importance of team basketball throughout her career, and maintaining strong on-court chemistry would naturally be a priority for any franchise player hoping to compete for championships. That doesn't necessarily mean specific reports about roster demands are accurate, but it does explain why fans have paid such close attention to every rumor surrounding Indiana's offseason. At the same time, every decision comes with consequences. The WNBA's salary cap leaves very little room for error, meaning retaining one key player can sometimes make it more difficult to keep another. Every contract signed has a ripple effect throughout the roster. That's why this offseason has become one of the most closely watched in the league. It's no longer just about individual free agents. It's about the direction of the entire franchise. And if Indiana ultimately chooses one path over another, the impact could extend far beyond next season. The decisions made now may determine whether the Fever can build a roster capable of competing for championships over the long term, or whether difficult financial realities force the organization to make painful sacrifices along the way. The comparisons to LeBron James have become impossible to ignore. Throughout his NBA career, LeBron developed a reputation for having significant influence over roster construction, coaching decisions, and the overall direction of his teams. That level of input came after years of elite performance, championships, MVP awards, and a proven history of leading franchises deep into the playoffs. Because of that history, many observers naturally accepted that his voice would carry enormous weight within an organization. Caitlin Clark's situation is different. She is still at the beginning of her professional career, yet discussions about her potential influence have already become a major storyline. That alone speaks to the extraordinary impact she has had on the league. Few athletes have generated this level of attention so quickly. The difference is that Clark's influence comes less from years of professional accomplishments and more from the unprecedented attention she has brought to the WNBA. Her arrival transformed television ratings, ticket demand, merchandise sales, and national interest in the league, making every decision involving the Indiana Fever a headline. If reports about her preferences regarding roster continuity are accurate, they suggest that Clark values familiarity and chemistry as much as individual talent. Fans have even given Clark, Lexie Hull, and Sophie Cunningham a playful nickname, celebrating the chemistry they appeared to build throughout the season. Whether that nickname becomes a lasting part of Fever culture or simply remains a fan creation, it reflects how closely supporters associate those players with one another. From a basketball standpoint, the logic is easy to understand. Clark is at her best when surrounded by teammates who can consistently space the floor, move without the basketball, defend with energy, and capitalize on the opportunities her passing creates. Players who understand those roles allow the offense to flow more naturally and maximize her unique playmaking ability. That doesn't necessarily mean those players are the biggest stars on the roster. Sometimes the best fit is more valuable than the biggest name. Championship teams are often built around complementary pieces that elevate one another rather than simply collecting the most recognizable talent. Whether the offseason ultimately unfolds that way remains to be seen. But one thing is certain. Every roster decision the Fever make will be viewed through the lens of building the best possible team around Caitlin Clark. And that's what makes this offseason so fascinating. It's no longer just about signing free agents or managing contracts. It's about defining the identity of one of the league's most closely watched franchises and deciding what kind of team Indiana wants to become over the next several years. The reports surrounding Indiana's offseason are even partially accurate. They highlight a difficult reality. Every roster decision creates another difficult choice somewhere else. The Fever have consistently indicated that keeping key contributors together is an important goal, and veteran guard Kelsey Mitchell has long been viewed as one of the franchise's priorities. But in a league with a tight salary cap, Retaining one player can make it significantly harder to keep another. That's why this